Hello and welcome everyone. So this video is going to be a solution walkthrough, just the solution actually, because I don't have the blank version of the exam, to the second exam in microeconomic principles. This exam covers price controls, taxes, gains from trade, international trade, externalities, and public goods. Well, and other types of goods. So public goods, common resources, club goods, and private goods. The first three are just true by definition. So market failure refers to a situation in which markets fail to reach an efficient outcome. That's the definition of market failure. So we say the competitive market will produce the efficient outcome in the sense of it'll maximize total economic surplus kind of on its own. And total economic surplus being maximized, that's what we mean by economic efficiency. Market failure is caused by market power in the case of monopoly, externalities, such as we covered on this exam, and then asymmetric information. And so if you have any of those things, then the market's not going to reach an efficient outcome. Actually, if the market fails to reach an efficient outcome, then government interventions like a price control or taxes can actually promote efficiency. So that's kind of important for policy. Okay, number two, to address a negative externality problem, a corrective tax should equal the marginal external cost. That's our measure of the externality. So marginal private cost plus marginal external cost, the externality, gives us marginal social cost. But the externality is marginal external cost. A corrective tax, if it's going to address the negative externality, it should equal the marginal external cost. Okay, fine. That's not true by definition, but it follows kind of directly from the definitions. A non-excludable good is one in which it's difficult to prevent someone from using or having access to the good. That's the definition of non-excludable. If a market produces an efficient amount of the good, we know the good it's got to be a private good. Not all private goods are going to reach the efficient amount, but it's got to be a private good. It can't be a public good because we have a positive externality, this leads to the free rider problem because people are able to get the spillover benefit without having paid for it because it's non-excludable and non-rival. We have the problem with common resource of the negative consumption externality. So we get market failure there. We call that problem the tragedy of the commons. In the public good problem, that's this one, non-excludable, non-rival, that's a public good. It's subject to the free rider problem. That means we don't get enough of the public good. Common resource is non-excludable but rival. It's subject to the tragedy of the commons. So we get market failure in those two cases. Private good is excludable and rival. That could potentially give us the efficient amount. It need not. You can certainly have market failure with a private good, such as if you have a monopoly delivering it. And then the club good, that's excludable and non-rival, but we can get market failure with a club good as well. Okay, so the graph depicts the market for furniture made from sustainable materials. The government wants to, let me kind of extend this a little bit. Government wants to encourage buyers to buy such furniture, and it imposes a price ceiling of $250. What happens as a result of the price ceiling? So remember, my advice always, whenever we're considering a particular price, is to locate the quantity demanded and quantity supplied at that particular price. So we're interested in the price of $250. We have to remember, is this a ceiling or floor? Oh, it's a ceiling, which means the price can't go any higher than $250. So the price isn't going to reach the equilibrium, which is $350. So that's a problem because we know we're imposing a below equilibrium price. We're going to get a shortage. Now let's investigate the shortage. Okay, let's go look and find the quantity demanded and quantity supplied at $250. Quantity supplied at $250, we run over and bump into the supply curve first. QS at $250 is right here. QD at $250 is right here. We're going to get a shortage here of 700 minus 300. That's 400, but this is in thousands, so 400,000 pieces of furniture. All right. So number 6, socially optimal outcome occurs where the blank benefit equals the blank cost. This is kind of true by definition. So this is where the marginal social benefit crosses the marginal social cost. So that's what that is. Consider the market for preschool education depicted in the accompanying diagram. If the government subsidizes preschool education, who captures most of the benefit of the subsidy? Preschools or families with children. It's actually here going to be the preschools because supply is more inelastic than demand. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the subsidy is not. I mean, the subsidy is still good. There's still going to be more children in preschool than without the subsidy, and actually we can see that because demand is really elastic. So the more vertical is the curve, the more inelastic. That's why I put these arrows here. The more horizontal, the more elastic, meaning the more responsive to the price. So what's going to happen is a lot of families are going to respond to this price change, and there's going to be this big increase in quantity, which is exactly what you'd want. That's the point of subsidizing preschool education. It's not so that the families pocket the subsidy. It's that you get a lot more children that are doing preschool education, because that's going to have positive returns to them in the future. And so this would be kind of a good situation, even though this looks like, yeah, the benefits going to the preschools, if we're talking about like the monetary benefit. But the fact that now we're getting a lot more children in getting preschool education services, like that's like a socially desirable outcome. And that relates back to my larger point, which is like, look, if we're thinking about the trade-off between efficiency and equality, lots of times we're interested in measures that are going to reduce inequality and promote equality at the expense, even at the expense of efficiency, also keeping in mind that it might just be the expense of efficiency in that specific market. If we look at the larger picture in terms of like the downstream effects, we might actually promote greater economic efficiency after we take in consideration all the other related markets that are part of our interdependence principle. Anyway, so a tax on sellers causes which of these? This is almost true by definition. This is kind of like how we model a tax on sellers. We're going to get a leftward shift to the supply curve. We're going to get a decrease in the quantity traded, QT. So I always mark QT. This is on the next one, but QT is going to be the quantity actually traded with a tax, or Q tax. An increase in the price buyers pay, that's going to happen. There's going to be a wedge between the price paid by buyers, PB, and the price received by sellers, PS. The difference between the two, PB minus PS, is the size of the tax. A is correct here. Later on a later graph, I can illustrate that better. Okay, so suppose the government imposes a price ceiling on a good because it believes the market-determined price is too high. Price ceiling above the equilibrium will cause... So what does it say? Non-binding. This is a price ceiling. Whenever I draw like a generic price ceiling, I like putting P upper bar. It tells us the price can't go any higher than that amount there. Well, it doesn't matter, because the price doesn't want to go higher. The price wants to stop there at equilibrium. This isn't going to have any impact on sellers or buyers. Right? This is a non-binding price ceiling. So, in other words, the government's policy here was ineffective. Could have happened because we had an increase in supply or a decrease in demand that lowered the equilibrium price relative to what it was before they enacted the policy. Remembering, as you cover in the macroeconomic course, that there's there's a recognition lag, administrative lag, and implementation lags that all slow down the impact of policy. Okay, so the Philharmonic wants to make sure its concerts are affordable for all residents and visitors to NYC, and therefore prices of all the tickets are going to be at $75. But outside of Lincoln Center, outside of the arena, the venue, people can sell the same tickets for $250 or more. This tells us the true cost of the symphony is at least $250, right? That was like my story of, in 2020, the Xbox X was listed at $499 on Microsoft's site, and the PS5 was listed at about the same on Sony's site, and then through their preferred vendors. But you couldn't get it there because it's all sold out. If you found elsewhere online, like on a reseller site, it was over $1,000 for both of those, telling us that the true price was much higher. Okay, in the importing country, the most likely effect of a tariff is to raise the price and decrease the quantity demanded. So we have to build the right picture. So we have imports. That tells us the world price is going to be below the domestic price. Then we've added a tariff. So I write PW is the world price. The price with the tariff is now PT. This is right here. Sometimes students will make a mistake and they'll try to draw the tariff as like a leftward shift of the supply curve. That doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work is because the tariff is a tax on imports only. This supply curve is the domestic supply curve. So even though the price paid for all items, whether they're produced domestically or abroad, is going to rise as a result of the tariff itself is actually only paid if it's an import. So we draw this as an upward shift of the world price. Anyway, it's going to raise the price, decrease the quantity demanded. So I just talked about the price. What about the quantity demanded? Well, without the tariff, the quantity supplied is here, quantity demanded is here, so imports are between these 2 points. After the tariff, here's quantity demanded, here's quantity supplied, imports are much smaller. Of course, that's the goal of the tariff, which is to reduce imports. Okay, so a person with the lowest opportunity cost of producing a particular good has a comparative advantage. True by definition. That's definition of comparative advantage. Goods and services produced or goods and services purchased from abroad are imports, whereas goods and services sold abroad are exports. D. True by definition. If the demand for prescription drugs is inelastic relative to supply, who will bear the greater burden of the tax? The side of the market that's more inelastic is going to bear the larger economic burden. So if demand is more inelastic, buyers will bear the burden of the tax. So here I've drawn the picture. Right here, here's a relatively inelastic demand curve, relatively elastic supply curve. Inelastic is going to be more vertical. Elastic is going to be more horizontal. Here's the original equilibrium. Now with the tax, I don't need to draw this as like a tax on buyers or a tax on sellers. Who cares? Either way, I'm going to get the same distance. This is going to be the quantity, whether it's a tax on buyers or a tax on sellers, right? If we're leftward shifting the demand curve, it's going to cross through this point right here. If we leftward shift the supply curve, it's going to cross through this point right here, right, as a result of the tax. Either way, we're going to get this same configuration with PB being quite a bit higher above P star than PS is below P star. I realize this kind of bled together a little bit, but that's supposed to be a P star and a PS for the original equilibrium price and the price sellers pay. In any case, this right here is the tax revenue paid by buyers. This smaller rectangle is tax revenue paid by sellers. Most of it's paid by buyers in that case. The city of Cleveland sets an emission tax to reduce the amount of pollution going into the Cuyahoga River. Assume the optimal tax would have been $2,500. City officials have set the tax at $1,000. At the equilibrium with a $1,000 tax, tax is insufficient. It's not enough to internalize the externality. It does the job partially, but doesn't get us all the way there. So here's the marginal private cost. Here's the marginal social cost. This telling us that the optimal tax would be $2,500 tells me that the true externality is $2,500. The tax we actually got was $1,000. So it's not even, it's not even halfway there. And so we'll get a larger amount with the tax than we would get with the optimal tax, although we will get a smaller amount with this tax than we would have got with the market left to its own devices. So it partially mitigates the externality, but not entirely. There's still going to be too much pollution. Okay, so there's 40 questions total. Should have mentioned that at the outset, sorry. All right, so the bath towel market graph right here. So we want to know, this is in equilibrium, how large is total economic surplus? There's two ways to do this. So one way is you can calculate consumer surplus, calculate producer surplus, add them together, or you can just calculate the area of the triangle directly. That's what I did. So the area of this triangle, 1/2 base times height, it's going to be 10 minus 2 is 8, 0 to 15, or 15 minus 0 is 15. That's this right here, 8 times 15, and then times 1/2. So that's going to be 1/2, let's see, so 8 times 15, 8 times 1/2 is 4 times 15 is 60. That's the $60. Okay, so if you pay a price exactly equal to your marginal benefit, your consumer surplus is 0, right? So you pay a price exactly equal to your marginal benefit. We'll talk about this later on being first-degree price discrimination. Well, that being useful for first-degree price discrimination. But anyway, consumer surplus is willingness to pay minus price. Willingness to pay is the marginal benefit. If you pay a price equal to your marginal benefit, consumer surplus is 0. That happens at the last unit when you're optimizing. You buy until the unit where your consumer surplus is 0. If your marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, our rational rule says buy one more. If your marginal benefit is less than the marginal cost, our rational rule says buy a little less. If it's equal, it says to stop. Hopefully by that point you've accrued a lot of economic surplus to buyers or consumer surplus, but at that point, that specific unit, then their consumer surplus will be 0. In the graph of the soft drink market shown here, the original equilibrium price is $2.50 per bottle. A tax is then placed on sellers. The economic burden on sellers is going to be, so here we have the graph. This is real nice. Here's going to be the price paid by buyers. Here's price received by sellers. Here's P star. The economic burden on sellers is going to be this 50 cents per bottle, the difference between P star and PS, right? Economic burden per unit to the seller is going to be P star minus PS. Economic burden per unit for buyers is going to be PB minus P star. Which of these government regulations is least likely to lead to market failure? So subsidies for vaccinations, because there's a positive externality that we're correcting for. Limits on sugar imports is probably going to lead to market failure because it's going to destroy economic activity. It's going to reduce, it's going to have us not import some units that the economy would have wanted. Rent controls, probably going to lead to market failure, so probably going to get a shortage. And farm subsidies is probably going to lead to overproduction. There's no externality there, right? This is a private good. You don't want to subsidize a private good unless there's, you don't want to subsidize a private good that doesn't have a positive externality. Okay, so to treat a sore back, we've got this course of physical therapy. Marginal benefit from first physical therapy session is $250, second is $225, third is $175, fourth is $100. Physical therapy costs $175 each. Okay, so what's the number of sessions, and then what's total consumer surplus for Kyoko? It's going to be willingness to pay minus marginal cost is going to give us the individual consumer surplus. So what I just did is I just made this table. So here's all the willingness to pay on session 1, session 2, session 3, session 4. Here's the marginal cost. It's constant. So as long as willingness to pay, as long as marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, you keep doing it. So we're going to go all the way down to the third one, and then we're going to stop before going to the fourth because now the marginal benefit is smaller than the marginal cost. Okay, so on the third unit we get 0 consumer surplus, but the first two we got 75 plus 50, which is 125. So it's B. Okay, so we've got cupcakes and muffins at a fundraiser. So we can get 40 or 20, we can get 15 or 15. Who has, what's the opportunity cost of producing one cupcake? Jennifer's is just 1. So 15 or 15, or 15 divided by 15 is 1, or 15 divided by 15 is 1. So Jennifer's is just 1. Marius, let's see, so 40 divided by 40 is 1, 20 divided by 40 is 1/2. So 1 cupcake or 1/2 muffin. So the opportunity cost of 1 cupcake is 1/2 muffin. The reason why I did it this way is I just write this out because comparative advantage has to do with opportunity cost. Anytime I do one of these problems, I always just write out opportunity cost directly. In this case, it was asking us for opportunity cost, so might as well just apply the property. So the idea is you could make 40 cupcake or you could make 20 muffins. And then what I wanted to do is, the reason why I divided through by 40 is because I want to get this as like a 1 to whatever ratio. And so I want to know what's the opportunity cost of 1 cupcake. So 40 cupcakes divided by 40 is 1 cupcake, but then I have to divide the other thing. So 20 divided by 40 is 1/2. That's why I did it that way. The market for plastic bags shown here, the original equilibrium price is 50 cents per bag. In an effort to reduce plastics, a tax is placed on buyers. So we're going to leftward shift the demand curve. What's the economic burden on buyers? Economic burden on buyers is going to be the difference between PB, which is 60 cents, and P star, which is 50 cents. So it's 10 cents. Okay, the free rider problem is most common when a good is non-excludable. So that's what allows you to free ride. You can't be prevented from consuming without paying for it, so it's not excludable. What statement describes the Coase theorem? If bargaining is costless, property rights are clearly established and enforced, externality problems can be solved through private bargaining. That's true by definition of Coase theorem. Marginal benefit minus marginal cost equals economic surplus. That's definition of the per unit economic surplus is marginal benefit minus marginal cost. And here's kind of the picture. Figure shows domestic market for engines. According to the figure, if there's international trade and the world price is $1,000, domestic consumers will purchase how many units from domestic and how many from foreign? Well, the market equilibrium, the domestic equilibrium looks like 800, right? If the world price is 1,000, we're going to have a situation where our domestic producers are going to want to export. And the idea is they're just going to say, they're going to look around, discuss amongst themselves, realizing, why do we want to sell it locally for 800 when we can sell it abroad for 1,000? Let's sell it to those who are willing to pay us more for it and then maximize profits. So the quantity supplied at the price of $100 or $1,000 is way out here. Quantity demanded at the price of $1,000, it's only right here. It looks like 400. And so they will purchase 400 units domestically, or that are produced domestically, and then they're not going to import any. It's going to be zero from foreign producers because this is an export situation. So we get zero actually for free. So it's 400. They're going to only produce, or they're only going to purchase, 400 units. If they were willing, like the domestic suppliers would be happy at a price of 1,000 to sell all the way out to 1,000 units, but consumers aren't going to bear that many units. The market won't bear that many units. All right, so demand for pairs is relatively elastic compared to supply. So if a tax is imposed on consumers, tax incidence elastic compared to supply. Sellers are going to bear the tax burden. So the idea would be like buyers can buy other types of pears, but sellers have an orchard that makes that type. Their trees are like that type of pear tree. So, if we tax that type of tree, they've got a problem. So the tax burden falls more on producers than on consumers. All right, so we're going back to our bake sale example. So we already knew Marius's opportunity cost for producing cupcakes. Jennifer's, we had that already. We also get that for free, so it's just 1 for 1. This tells us that Jennifer should specialize in muffins. We're going to get 15 muffins, and that actually gives us the answer, right? So we know that because you want to specialize in whatever you have the lowest opportunity cost in. Here, Jennifer's opportunity cost of 1 cupcake is 1 versus 1/2. So Jennifer has the higher opportunity cost of producing cupcakes, therefore specializes in muffins. Oh, by the way, Jennifer's opportunity cost of muffins is 1 for 1, but Marius is going to be 2. So anyway, so Jennifer is going to specialize in muffins. We'll get 15 muffins. There's only one answer that has 15, so we know it's C. 15 for muffins. The first one was cupcakes, second one is muffins. When farmers grow apples, there's a number of external costs. In particular, apples not sold or picked will spoil and get rotten, generate methane gas. If the marginal external cost is $10 per bushel of apples, the government imposes a tax of $20 per bushel of apples. Oops, there's a problem. So the externality that we want internalized is $10, but they're going to charge a tax of $20, which means they've overcorrected. So now we're going to get too few apples, right? This is kind of the opposite problem of the other one. That first tax example, they didn't do enough. Here they did too much. Okay, when trade is based on comparative advantage, both trading partners will be better off. So the idea is you can generate more total stuff when we trade according to comparative advantage. Specialize according to comparative advantage, and then trade according to comparative advantage. Markets distribute production across companies in a way that minimizes costs. So the idea is this is how we maximize efficiency in the like a market system, is we have our low cost sellers being the ones that will produce. That's why with tariffs we introduce inefficiency, because what happens is we have higher cost domestic sellers who are outcompeted by more efficient lower cost foreign sellers until the tariff is implemented. And then with the tariff, the lower cost foreign producers who should have efficiently been producing the units are prevented from doing that production, at least profitably so. And so then our less efficient domestic producers take over that production, and that introduces inefficiency. So that's a problem. Okay, Georgia Pacific, one of the largest manufacturers of paper products, operates multiple mills. If a new technology enabled zero-emission paper production, the marginal private cost would equal the marginal social cost. Then there'd be no externality. Remember, marginal social cost is marginal private cost plus marginal external cost. If there's no marginal external cost, then the marginal private cost equals marginal social cost. Okay, 33. So this is audiobooks. Price floor of $5 is imposed in this market. So this is a price floor, right? I put P lower bar to indicate that this is a price floor. It's not allowing the price to go any lower. Oh, who cares? Nobody wants the price to be that low anyway. The equilibrium price is way up here. So this is a non-binding price control. It's going to have no effect. So the answer is B. Marginal social benefit received from pollution is equal to the marginal social cost. Then firms are going to produce the socially optimal level of pollution, right? So if the marginal social benefit equals the marginal social cost, then there's no externality. Then there's no market failure. So we get the socially optimal level. So using the accompanying graph, it shows Becca and Marcella's marginal benefit for cheesecake, which I think is disgusting. I went to a graduation when I was a little kid, and they had cheesecake at the end of the reception, and I thought it was regular cake, so I took it. I wasn't supposed to have this dessert anyway because I wasn't graduating. I was just a guest or whatever. I don't know. So I grabbed the cheesecake and I ran off in the corner. I was gonna pop it in my mouth. That's probably, I don't know. It's probably about 8 years old. And it was horrible. Like I almost lost. I not only lost my cake, I almost lost my cookies right there. I had to find a garbage can. It was brutal. And to this day, I just hate cheesecake. Some people love. I don't know. It's not for me. Anyway, but it definitely is for Becca and Marcella. So let's see how many units of cheesecake they want at $3. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this price, we're going to run into their marginal benefit, that's their willingness to pay, and go down and see their price, or see their number of slices. So for Becca, it'll be 4. For Marcella, it's going to be 2. So total, we're going to get 6 slices, which is 6 too many in my book. But we're going to get 4 from Becca, we're going to get 2 from Marcella. Or 4. We're going to give those slices of cheesecake to those characters. Marginal social benefit is the term for all marginal benefits, no matter who gets them. So that's marginal private benefit to our market participants, plus marginal external benefit to our bystanders. Jointly, that's marginal social benefit. You're considering whether to expand your 3D printing business. If you do not engage in trade, blank determines domestic output. With trade, blank determines domestic output. If you don't engage in trade, what's going to determine domestic output is going to be the intersection of the domestic market supply and demand curve, right? So that'll just give us our market equilibrium quantity. That'll be the quantity traded. With trade, what determines domestic output? Oh, where world price crosses the domestic supply curve, right? And so let me just go back to this picture. Well, where was my international? This is way too far. I remember this as being closer. What was this really way? Okay, here it is. So our domestic output, it's going to be determined, it's going to be the quantity supplied domestically, right? So with international trade, here's QS. So it's where the world price crosses the domestic supply. All right, I don't know if that was worth that or not, but now I'm making myself car sick. All right, so if South Korea must give up the production of 75 notebook computers to produce 25 additional cell phones, the opportunity cost of producing 4 cell phones is blank computers. So just apply the opportunity cost principle. You could produce 75 computers or 25 cell phones. Wait, we want to get this in terms of cell phones. 25 cell phones or 75 computers. I want to get this as 1 cell phone to however many computers. So 25 divided by 25 gets me 1 phone, or 75 divided by 25, 3 computers. So that gets me partially there, except we want to produce 4 cell phones. So for each cell phone, we lose 3 computers, but we're going to do that 4 times. So it's going to be 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, Carla and June are team leaders for our construction company. This gives us the number of months the teams need to build 2 types of projects. This is 3 for Carla. This is 6 for Carla. This is 4 and 5. But these are number of months. We have to convert this to outputs. We have the total number of months is 15. So in 15 months, if it takes us 3 months for a single family home, we're going to get 5 single family homes. In 15 months, if it takes us 6 months to make a commercial real estate space, retail space, that'll give me 15 divided by 6 units. Or for June, 4 months to produce a single family home, but we have 15 months. So in that time, we can get 15 fourths. Or 5 months to produce a retail space, we have 15 months, that'll give us 3. Okay, so that's how I got these. Now using these outputs, I'm going to apply my opportunity cost principle. And so I'm going to say 5 or 15 sixths, or 1 or 5 over 5, or 15 sixths over 5, or times 1/5. So this cancels, this gives me 1 or 1/2. 15 fourths or 3 for June, 4 times 15, or 4 times 15 thirds, right? Because I'm trying to get this in terms of 1 versus however many. 1 or 12/15 says 1 or 4/5. 1/2 is smaller than 4/5. 4/5 is like 0.8. 1/2 is like 0.5. So here's a comparative advantage in homes. In 3 months per home, or if we have 15 months, they produce 3 homes or 3 months to produce a home. Then we have 5 total will be produced with specialization. So you could do this just using these using the time commitments. So, for instance, 3 months for a family home is half the time that you need for a commercial real estate. So the opportunity cost is 1 or 1/2, right? Or this is going to be double the time you need to make a single family home. Okay, so last one, the graph shows the marginal social benefit, marginal private benefit, and marginal private curves in taco market. In this market, the socially optimal output will be, socially optimal is where marginal social benefit crosses marginal social costs. It'll be 6. The actually market delivered quantity will be where marginal private cost crosses marginal private benefit. That'll be 4. And then here, just real quick, this is just all those answers. If you took the exam, you could just kind of skip to this, I guess. I'll mention that in the description. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you did well in the exam, and then I will see you in the next one.